Have you ever wondered if your thoughts, desires, and actions are truly your own? What if I told you that there might be a brain parasite lurking inside you, influencing your decisions without you even knowing it? In this video, we're going to explore the disturbing possibility that your brain could be host to a parasite that controls your behavior, emotions, and even your very identity. In the most unsettling of ways, the human brain is not always the impenetrable fortress we might believe it to be. We often think of ourselves as the masters of our own minds, completely in control of our decisions and actions. However, lurking beneath the surface of our consciousness, there are organisms that can infiltrate our brains, hijacking our mental processes for their own survival. These parasites, tiny and often invisible to the naked eye, can subtly manipulate the way we think, feel, and act. Their existence raises the uncomfortable possibility that we may not be entirely in control of our own minds. The human brain, with its intricate network of neurons, chemical signals, and electrical impulses, is an ideal environment for parasites to exploit. The central nervous system, which regulates everything from motor functions to emotions, is incredibly complex and interconnected. For a parasite, the brain represents both a challenge and a prize. Once inside, a parasite can manipulate its host to behave in ways that serve its interests, often without the host even realizing it. These parasites enter the brain through various routes, often by way of the bloodstream or through ingestion of contaminated food or water. Once they reach the brain, they may release neurotoxins that interfere with the host's normal neural activity, causing shifts in mood, behavior, and even cognition. The effects can range from mild, almost imperceptible changes to more severe disruptions that manifest in erratic or dangerous behavior. Over time, the host's brain becomes rewired to suit the parasite's needs, often with profound and lasting consequences. But how does this manipulation happen? The key lies in the way our brains are wired to respond to stimuli. We are creatures of habit and pattern, our brains constantly seeking feedback from the environment to reinforce our behavior and ensure survival. A parasite can tap into this system, altering our patterns of thought to its advantage. The brain's reward system, which is responsible for feelings of pleasure and satisfaction, can be co-opted to make us crave actions or substances that benefit the parasite. In this way, the parasite doesn't need to physically control the brain, but rather it exploits the brain's own natural processes to steer the host toward behaviors that serve the parasite's needs. Some parasites have evolved the ability to influence their hosts in incredibly sophisticated ways. For example, they can alter the way the host perceives certain situations, making them more susceptible to risk-taking or compulsive behavior. In some cases, the changes are so profound that the host may lose the ability to recognize that their thoughts and actions are being manipulated. One of the most famous and well-studied examples of a brain parasite is Toxoplasma gondii. This single-celled organism is known to infect a wide variety of mammals, including humans. The parasite's life cycle is complex and requires two hosts: a definitive host, usually a cat, and an intermediate host, often a rodent or other small mammal. The parasite's journey begins when a rodent is infected by ingesting contaminated food or water. Once inside the rodent's body, toxoplasma makes its way to the brain, where it begins to manipulate the host's behavior. Infected rodents are no longer fearful of cats, which is highly unusual since they would typically avoid predators. Instead, the parasite alters the rodent's brain chemistry, making it more likely to be attracted to the scent of cat urine. This ultimately increases the chances that the rodent will be eaten by a cat, completing the parasite's life cycle. While this might seem like an odd and somewhat comical example of manipulation, the implications for humans are much more concerning. Human infection with Toxoplasma gondii can also lead to subtle but significant behavioral changes. Studies have found that people infected with the parasite tend to exhibit higher levels of risk-taking behavior, as well as changes in personality, such as increased impulsivity or even heightened aggression. This has led some scientists to speculate that toxoplasma might be contributing to conditions like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or other psychological disorders by altering the brain's neurotransmitter systems. The idea that a tiny parasite could have such a profound effect on human behavior is both alarming and fascinating. Could it be that millions of people are unknowingly carrying a parasite that is subtly influencing their thoughts and actions? But toxoplasma is just one example of a much larger phenomenon. There are many other parasites that can infiltrate the human brain and manipulate our behavior. Some of these are less well known, but no less disturbing. For example, a parasite called Naegleria fowleri, commonly referred to as the brain-eating amoeba, can enter the brain through the nasal passages when contaminated water is inhaled. This parasite causes a rare but deadly infection known as primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, PAM, which results in rapid brain damage and death. While the infection is extremely rare, it serves as a reminder that our brains can be vulnerable to even the smallest organisms. In addition to these direct brain parasites, there are other, more insidious forms of influence that can hijack our minds. The modern world is rife with external forces, advertising, social media, peer pressure, that manipulate our thoughts and behaviors in ways that can feel just as invasive as any biological parasite. These external parasites prey on our desires, fears, and insecurities, shaping our worldview and guiding our decisions. The constant bombardment of stimuli can create a kind of cognitive dissonance where we are pushed and pulled in so many directions that we begin to lose sight of our true selves. This form of parasitic influence is harder to detect because it feels so much like a natural part of life, but it can still exert a profound effect on our actions and mental state. The most chilling aspect of brain parasites, however, is the possibility that they might be more common than we realize. There are many parasites that affect the brain without showing clear symptoms, operating in the background of our lives, silently influencing our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. They may not be as dramatic or easily recognizable as toxoplasma, but their cumulative effect on human psychology could be far-reaching. These hidden parasites are not confined to the animal kingdom. They exist within us, subtly altering the way we perceive the world and make decisions. As unsettling as it may seem, the science behind brain parasites is real. The notion that these microscopic invaders can infiltrate our minds, rewire our thoughts, and influence our actions is no longer confined to the realm of science fiction. We may never fully understand the extent to which our minds are shaped by forces outside of our control, but one thing is certain: our brains are more vulnerable than we think. And perhaps, just perhaps, there's a parasite inside all of us, slowly but surely, taking hold of our thoughts and steering us toward an uncertain future. In the labyrinth of the human mind, the most dangerous parasites are often the ones we cannot see. These insidious invaders are not the kind that burrow into our brain tissue or latch onto our neurons, but rather they seep into the very fabric of our psyche. These parasites are ideas, behaviors, and forces that we encounter in life, shaped by our environment, our upbringing, and the society we live in. Unlike biological organisms, these psychological parasites can be harder to recognize, and their impact can be so deeply ingrained that we begin to believe they are a part of who we are. One of the most powerful forms of parasitic influence is the societal pressure that shapes our identity. From an early age, we are conditioned to seek approval, to fit in, and to conform to the expectations of others. These external forces, family, friends, teachers, media, implant ideas in our minds about who we should be, what we should want, and how we should behave. These ideas become internalized, influencing not just our behavior, but also our sense of self-worth. We are taught to equate success with external validation, be it money, popularity, or status. And over time, we begin to shape our actions, choices, and even our very thoughts around the pursuit of these external rewards, abandoning our authentic selves in the process. This process of external influence is particularly dangerous because it is so subtle and pervasive. We might not even recognize that we are being manipulated by the norms and expectations of society. What we think of as our own desires, aspirations, and goals may, in reality, be a result of years of conditioning. The need to be liked, to be admired, or to be successful can create a kind of mental slavery, where we are driven by the constant fear of rejection or failure. This external pressure becomes a parasite, feeding off our insecurities and manipulating us into living a life that is not truly our own. The pursuit of pleasure and instant gratification is another powerful parasite that thrives in modern society. We live in an age of consumerism, where everything is designed to be accessible at the touch of a button. Social media, entertainment, food, shopping, all of these are readily available, offering us quick fixes to soothe our desires and distract us from deeper existential questions. The temptation of pleasure is ever present, and it can be incredibly difficult to resist. This is especially true when we are conditioned to believe that happiness lies in the acquisition of things, experiences, or even the approval of others. But what we often fail to realize is that the pursuit of pleasure, while providing momentary relief, can ultimately lead to emptiness and dissatisfaction. Just as a parasite feeds off its host, so too does the pursuit of pleasure feed off our minds and bodies. We find ourselves trapped in a cycle of desire and consumption, chasing fleeting moments of happiness while neglecting our deeper needs for purpose, connection, and meaning. Over time, the more we give in to these pleasures, the more we lose touch with who we really are. We become dependent on these external sources of gratification, unable to find fulfillment in anything that isn't tied to momentary pleasure. In addition to these societal and psychological parasites, there are other, more personal influences that can hijack our minds. Trauma, childhood neglect, and unresolved emotional wounds can also function as parasites, distorting our perception of ourselves and the world. These experiences can create deep-seated beliefs and patterns of behavior that govern our lives, even when we are not consciously aware of them. We may find ourselves repeating toxic patterns, choosing relationships or behaviors that reinforce our pain and self-doubt, all because of the unresolved trauma from our past. These emotional parasites can be just as damaging as any physical one, robbing us of our peace of mind and our ability to live authentically. Breaking free from these psychological parasites requires deep self-awareness and a willingness to confront the forces that have shaped our lives. It means questioning the beliefs and ideas that we have inherited from others and recognizing when they no longer serve us. It involves confronting the sources of external validation, whether it's the pressure to conform to societal norms or the desire for pleasure, and learning to find satisfaction from within. At the heart of this process is the need to reconnect with our true selves, our essence, our core values, and our authentic desires. This is not an easy task, and it often requires unlearning much of what we have been taught. It involves a process of self-discovery, where we challenge the narratives we have been living by and replace them with a deeper understanding of who we are and what we truly want from life. In this process, we may have to let go of old attachments, old beliefs, and old habits that no longer align with our authentic selves. Reclaiming control over our minds is no small feat, but it is essential for breaking free from the parasites that have taken root in our psyches. The first step is to recognize that we are not powerless in the face of these influences. Just as we have been shaped by the external world, so too can we reshape our minds and our lives. It requires a willingness to be honest with ourselves, to face our fears and insecurities head-on, and to choose a path that is true to who we are rather than one dictated by the expectations of others. In the journey of self-liberation, one of the most important tools we can use is mindfulness. By practicing mindfulness, we can begin to observe our thoughts and feelings without judgment, allowing us to gain greater insight into the unconscious forces that govern our behavior. Mindfulness helps us to develop a sense of inner peace and clarity, enabling us to differentiate between the voices of external parasites and our own true inner voice. With practice, we can begin to regain control of our minds and make choices that align with our authentic selves, rather than the expectations or pressures of the outside world. Another crucial aspect of freeing ourselves from parasitic influence is healing our emotional wounds. This may involve seeking therapy, engaging in self-reflection, or confronting the trauma that has shaped our past. By addressing these unresolved issues, we can begin to break the hold that past experiences have on our present lives. Healing from trauma allows us to release the negative beliefs and patterns that keep us stuck in cycles of pain and self-sabotage. In doing so, we create space for healthier, more authentic patterns of thought and behavior to emerge. Ultimately, freeing ourselves from the parasites that control our minds is about reclaiming our autonomy and our humanity. It is about choosing to live a life that is guided by our deepest values, desires, and passions, rather than being driven by external forces or fleeting pleasures. It is about recognizing that we have the power to shape our own reality and that our minds are not mere vessels to be controlled by outside influences. By embracing this power, we can break free from the parasitic forces that seek to manipulate us and step into a life of true freedom, purpose, and authenticity. While the journey may be long and difficult, it is one worth taking. The more we understand about the forces that control our minds, the more equipped we become to fight back. And in the process, we can discover a deeper sense of peace, clarity, and fulfillment that comes from living a life that is truly our own.